Good day. I am Carolyn Rice, and I am CEO of an overseas community hospital. My hospital is situated in a remote overseas location, although in an urban area is distinctly the only American facility. This poses unique challenges requiring the crisis management program to be prepped to operate independently until reinforcements are able to arrive. During the pandemic, there were significant staff shortages throughout the hospital, despite the need for an expanded medical response. Entry-level staff positions were only filled at 50%, which poses risks for patient safety events. Risk management of these vacancies now needed to be considered, along with the traditional hazards of a remote location with high turnover of inexperienced staff. The umbrella of risk management incorporates all of these hazards and creates a landscape in which the crisis management program is a component. The program utilizes the assessment of identified hazards and, based on their likelihood of occurring and/or their likely impact to the organization, identifies which of these will become potential crisis. And based on this, I felt that a sentinel event, which is an unexpected life-threatening outcome or death, is a crisis that can come from these pre-staffing conditions. When I consider the steps I would take to handle this, it must be considered in the context of the life cycle of a crisis at each stage, not just the response phase alone. In the prevention phase, the completion of the annual hazard vulnerability analysis identified the risks of the sentinel patient harm event. Once identified, in the prevention and prepare phases, awareness of this specific crisis can be shared with the staff and then exercised with drills and lessons learned to test our protocols. In the response phase, the ICS can be activated by any staff member. Once approved for activation by the ICS commander, mass notification to all staff needs to be timely. The team must assemble at the designated predetermined location, and the operation chief briefs the situation right away with the inputs from the others, while the PAO creates the internal and appropriate external media release. Adapted directly from NIMS training required of all hospitals to utilize, the following illustrates the operational cycle. The initial or updated information is collected and outlined. Objectives are established. The plan is determined. The communication plan is coordinated, and then the execution occurs. The ICS and identified interventions remain critical as you move into recovery too, as resources may be needed to resume or maintain contingency operations that cannot be stopped in a hospital despite needing to respond and recover from a crisis. The mitigations or lessons learned should be gathered from the start. So as a learning organization, we are applying reporting, timeliness, and communication opportunities along the way, but also it's a distinct phase too. Getting feedback from all and reviewing crisis protocols for changes based on this should occur and be shared with all. Crisis communication strategy occurs at each phase and should be educational and informative in the first two phases, but time sensitive and simple in the response phase. Details such as who is the face of the communication on TV or elsewhere must be determined, prepped early, and the scanning and feedback of the crisis response itself must be made so that adjustments can be sorted out and determined along the way. Remember, the communication messaging, keep it simple. Response times should be measured in minutes, not hours. Connect with the audience and be authentic as to what you know and don't. What did I learn the most? I had a pretty narrow view of crisis management. I really focused on the response aspect and the related communication alone. The course taught me to think about each phase, specifically the preconditions and the enterprise risk management process. When you consider this and the work done in prevention phases, perhaps you can avoid crisis altogether. Do you have any questions?